Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Hashtag Leadership What's on Your Mind, a podcast really to get you to stop and think about your leadership journey by bringing great guests and experts in their field to tell stories about their perspectives and their experiences in their leadership journey. So today we are speaking to Sukhi. Sukhi, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm very well, thank you, Stuart. Thank you for having me.
That's amazing. So Sukhi was actually recommended to me. Now we're leveling up our guests on the podcasts. It's been amazing that Sukhi's been put in front of me, and it was great to get hold of you. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you are working, I love this stat, you're working in around about 34 sectors in business, and you've done a fantastic TED Talk, which I have consumed recently, and I really enjoyed that. So Sukhi, for those people who don't know you, tell us a bit about where are you in the UK, and tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing.
Sure, thank you. What a great question. A little bit about myself, if I can share. I'm born and bred Peterboring, so that's basically just near Cambridge for anybody who's West Coast like yourself. I'm on the east, more central, sitting on the A1, that kind of place. Born and bred here. We're 7 generations in business. My elders have been in the UK since 1930s, late 30s, and my father has been established in Peterborough area since 1967. So I kind of grew up, if I can share, really humbly in an environment of business entrepreneurship, which is the new buzzword nowadays, but around entrepreneurship or business people. I didn't really understand anything but that, if you understand what I mean. It was all about business, and that was what I was going to do when I grew older. That's principally what happened. If I was to look back, if I can share just open-heartedly, because I know how frank and honest your talk show is, that I would say 70% of who I am probably came from my mother, my mum Gurmeet Kaur, who actually passed into the light in 2018, but she is very much the lion's share of how my personality was actually carved. And on the same token, my father, his gusto, go-get, and sheer skill of being able to see a deal or a property deal or a renovation or in retail has also rubbed off in some way. My actual leadership, you should say, because I love it, that the focus is leadership here. My leadership journeys probably started off around, as an individual, as an independent individual, I've got a very do or do not attitude anyway. But I would say probably around when I was 17, 18 years old, around that time frame when I was just finishing off my A-levels. Up until then, I was in full-time education, but then I decided to switch to college so I can do part-time. Well, actually, it was still full-time. A-levels, etc. But it gave me the flexibility of being able to take over one of the family businesses way back in circa 1990. And what I did is it was a retail store which needed some assistance at the time. And my mum was the one who actually told me, said, son, it's about time you kind of got into business. Is it something you could look at? And I said, Mum, I'm on my journey to become an architect. I'd love to do the business, but later. And she said, okay, look, I'm sure you'll work a way out. I said, well, I was planning to stay on at school. In those days, it was Jack Hunt School here in Peterborough. And obviously, when you're in sixth form, if you recollect, it's school hours. You can't just walk in and out and do what you want to do and turn up just for your lessons. You come in the morning and you go in the evening, like in the afternoon, like a normal school day. And there was no possibility that I'd be able to run a secondary business as well. So my thoughts were, how can I do this? So I suppose self-leadership is what I was going to say. I made that decision to go to college and see what that was like. And when they said to me, well, no, it's not like school at all. Your teachers you'll be able to either call them by their first name, that very uni atmosphere, by their first name, or some of them, but the older generation still prefer you to call them by their surname. But you turn up for your lesson and that's it. You go away. And I went, Most people were thinking of truancy, but I was thinking, oh, great, I can balance the business now. I could be here and be there, that kind of scenario. So I suppose, Stuart, my leadership started with self around when I was 17, 18 years old. Whilst I was still studying in A-levels, I ran a retail shop as well here in Peterborough, a Cromwell Road shop. And if this goes out to anybody who does know me, it's usually known as my surname, Wahiwala and Co. That's what it used to be called in those days. And it was a hardware, DIY, I suppose you could say a pots, pans, everything you wanted, from electronics through to a nail. So that's what I did. And at the time, I built up another 3 companies within that, within those few years whilst I was studying as well. So I suppose that's my first leadership. If you're looking at formal study or formal leadership, the very first thing I did was at Cranfield University through a business acceleration program. And that was in DISC psychometrics. I was still 18 years old. So I suppose my self-questioning, thinking outside of the box, maybe even, I think one of the most important things, starting to learn myself, which I think is the key thing, because most of us pretend we know ourselves and we haven't really got that scientific evidence. So for me, psychometrics, DISCs gave me DISC psychometrics, which is dominant, influencer, stability, or compliant, which are 4 archetypes in period, or actually profiles, allows me to sort of understand myself and the world in a more productive way. So that was probably my first journey into leadership, through psychology and psychometrics and assistance.
Amazing. Do you know, I love that. And I can very much resonate with that story. I didn't go to sixth form. I went straight to college because I had a love of sport, and I was able to go and study what I love to do rather than keeping to the normal subjects, if you like. So I can resonate with that. So one of the questions that I know my audience will know that we always ask about your leadership journey, and one of the things I add is were you conscious of it, or was it on reflection? And you've just sort of answered that already, that it seems like you had self-awareness and you were conscious of your decisions. I know that you say your greatest mentors in business were your parents, and I've read that about your story as well. Where's that deep rooted, and where did that start from? Because from what a lot of my guests have said was from middle teens to 20s, that's where their journey started. Was it sooner for you because you had that great awareness of leadership when you were even coming at the back end of school?
That's a deep question, Stuart. In a humble way, if I can share, obviously there are phases of life, and each and every one of us goes through 7-year cycles. Without me going too much into details of the science of that, you have the first 7 years, which are imprint, 0 to 7. You have the second 7 years, which are 7 to 14, which are much more orientated around modeling somebody else outside the world. You know, the first one tends to be mum, and mum says, what's a cup? What's a plate? What's a glass? And then the second phase, which is modeling, you tend to look at somebody else outside of mum and yourself, or maternal energy I'm talking. Could be a mum, could be a foster mum, could be anything, could be grandma. And then the second phase, which I said to you, is modeling. It's about when you look at probably a paternal energy, you know, a father's energy, that kind of scenario. When you look at how they pick the cup up, as opposed to thinking, what is the cup? The next phase is to understand, how do they pick it up? How do they handle themselves? How do they walk, etc. Then from about 14 to 21, you go into what we classify as the socialization phase. And this is when we start to bond relationships with people outside of our family, outside of our immediate family, in a much more strengthened format, much more multifaceted way, with social complexities there. Also, that's when we start to deem the school teacher as somebody who's a third teacher properly. We have teachers in junior school, infant school, and obviously nursery, but you don't have deep embedded memories with them as being your mentor teachers. But when you're in your secondary school, you tend to be very much influenced by the way a school teacher is. So if I said to you leadership on a personal level of self-leadership, I think it was always ingrained. And I think that was properly planned nurture on behalf of my parents, my siblings, because I'm the youngest of 8 children. And it was always expected to kind of be self-aware and self-responsible. And I think leadership starts with self-responsibility. So I was always aimed and expected to be self-responsible. I would say my journey started of when I started to genuinely look at how to be a leader of others. I would say very, very easily around the 15, 16 years old, when I genuinely got involved much more within the businesses and turned up at the shops and, you know, and actually helped stack shelves and stuff. And kind of when we were younger, we were doing it, but it was parrot fashion or paint by colors, where, oh, can you stack that shelf? Can you do this? When I started coming in around, when I was more conscious, around, 14, 15, 16, what we would classify as our, if you got an older generation, O-level age or GCSE age, that's when I started to really realize that my mum always told me that this is all yours anyway. So, take charge whenever you want. It's all yours anyway. If you wanted one of those pens, pencils, toys, guns, toy guns, or a watch, it's yours anyway. Just think about, if I had to sell this, I'd get some return on capital, some profit in essence, and it would help keep the business running, et cetera, et cetera. So whatever you take out of the shop, because we had a regular sort of, when I was a child, I wanted this, Mum, I want that, Dad, I want this, Dad. And whatever you take out is fine, but you're taking it away from the profitability of the company, and it's yours anyway. If you really need it, then ask for it. So that's when the stimulation of self-awareness came in, because it was a natural thing to do. Take a double take. Is it worth asking? Then of people, of others, sorry, I'm overlaying this bit, but then of others, I'd say that sort of time frame when I used to turn up, and I would take on certain criteria, actions, like I'd say aisle 1, aisle 2, they're my responsibility. So all the stock on there, instead of being parrot fashion, put that up there, I'd go and look and search and find it, and ask a question. Whereabouts is this in the stock room? Why is that then? Oh, because there's only 3 on the shelf and I want to stock it up. Okay, go and have a look. This is what it'll be, etc. So I suppose that's when it started. Leader of other people, the third phase, leader of awareness of self, leading self, trying to be more autonomous, and then leading other people. Most definitely when I moved into my 17, 18 years old, when I started to contemplate running the business and actually turning up in the morning, being responsible, even as little as a thing as talking to a customer without having the mentality of, I'm just doing my job, or I'm just a salesperson and it's Dad's business or it's Mum's business. It was actually, this sits with me. When that self-responsibility came in, leadership automatically came in, including when a customer came to ask for something, I would feel that I wanted to help that person to find it. Alternatively, get it in for them. So, order it in and supply it to them. So I suppose that's when true leadership came in, around about 17, 18 years old, when I started to contemplate actually how to run businesses as well.
Amazing. And again, from listening to that myself and our audience, you can hear and see why you're so successful now. Okay. Those layers and layers at an early age. And we talk about that. It's a journey, not a destination. And one of my questions now is like moving into sharing your perspectives and knowledge and your skill set now, and sharing that for others, because everybody who's listening to this is at some point on their leadership journey. Saying that you're in 34-ish sectors in your businesses, and your success and your level of workmanship. And I shared with you about one of my observations when leaving the military, that everybody was busy being busy. How do you, in that level of commitment to your businesses, not fit into that busy being busy? How are you operating at such a high performance in business, in yourself, and then whether demanding probably isn't the right word, but encouraging that environment where everybody else fits into that same high performance, let's be productive and get things happening?
Jenna, first things first, thank you very much for even accounting me in that sentence, because that sentence sounded truly amazing. I think we're always on an evolution where the moment you can realize that inner humility of realization that every single day is a learning day, and ideally to remain or retain the ability to be a student, which is what actually I'm a British born Sikh. Sikh, also pronounced as Sikh. Sikh meaning S-I-K-H, is my religious beliefs and my order that I'm with. It's very clear that the name Sikh, which actually means learn, it has no other connotation besides just learn. It was embedded in me as a child, myself as a child, and all of our siblings and children, and everybody else who's a learned Sikh, that to be a Sikh is a lifelong learner. So it's about learning every single day, evolving yourself. So with that humility, I'm thinking, I don't look back and think what I've achieved. Actually, it's just like what I've got to get done. And one of the key things that happened was a very significant point, to answer the question, by the way, sorry, it was a very significant point in my life where if anybody wants to listen to this again, it's on a TED talk on Google, on YouTube, sorry, I do apologize, on their channel. And I spoke about a near-death experience which changed my world around circa when I was 31, turning 32. And what happened is that a few years earlier, I'd already lost this. I'd felt that I wanted to do something more, even at that time within business. At the time, we were running 13, 14 companies, and I wanted to go. I was feeling unfulfilled. It wasn't the money. It was just something was inside me. And every time I spoke to somebody and actually helped them, it really switched me on. It gave me a value to self. Does that make sense? That I actually assisted somebody and actually gave something of value to that person, whether it was a sale, whether it was listening to them properly and actually advising them correctly with honor, humility, and respect of that person's journey, their version of the world. They're the things that really stimulated my thought of kind of like, where am I going? What am I doing? And what's the purpose of life? So one of the key things that I always tell everybody is that when I had a near-death experience, I kind of like decided this is not where I want to be, and this is not the journey I wanted to do. So I started to refocus and restudy back into the flow of understanding psychology, neurolinguistics, way back. And today, I've spawned quite a depth of knowledge in different versions with gratitude to the divine. And from there, on the TED Talk, I shared one of my philosophies called the DFT method. The DFT method stands for daily focused time, and at the same time, direct focused thought. And I'll explain the two different points. One is a program that, if I may share, that I deliver on YouTube as well. It's on my YouTube channel, and it's called the Daily Tips Show. It's episode 13, where I actually explain this in much detail, so I don't need to stretch too much of your time with this one. My apologies. But one is to decide, how does one actually focus their brain and deliver a task, meaning peak potential, which is directing my focused thought. So DFT, direct my focused thought. But another one is daily focused time. It's actually the framework which is delivered in, for example, the real time, hour, morning, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, etc. All those sort of things. And then behind each one of these is actually a key philosophy that I've established with gratitude, again, to the divine, where simplification of actual simple steps that a person can follow, which is a 7-step process, where you can constantly be on it and be aware and be conscious of what action you've got to do. The biggest challenge is proven medically, psychologically, by the London School of Psychology, also the Heart Math Institute in America, California, many individuals and institutes in psychology, that multitasking actually doesn't work, purely because of the fact that multitasking itself as an action is basically training your brain not to complete a task. It's jumping from one incomplete task to another incomplete task, maybe back to it, but it's jumping. So what happens is that it actually, this is really quite shocking, it reduces, medically proven to reduce your IQ, because your unconscious brain is sent messages from your conscious thinking that it's okay not to complete a task. And it becomes a very bad habit. Well, those things aren't in my agenda. I do one thing at a time, and I do it very well. It's like me being on this podcast and interview with yourself with my mobile phone in my hand, attempting to try and articulate a conversation with you, really trying to be in that focus, but at the same time, looking at my texts, or somebody just sent me a text or something. So it is a disturbing factor. Now, the other thing as well is that conscious multitasking is an impossibility, actually. Does that make sense? It's not actually possible. So finding and understanding and accepting these few things is what are the key to managing time effectively, being effective in your world. Because the more focused you are and the less tasks you're doing, meaning if you're doing one task at a time, you'll get the task done quicker. So if you get the task done quicker, you'll be more efficient. And there are times and phases of your body and certain times of the day that you would like to talk. There's times of the day when you'd like to just get stuff done cognitively. There's times when you want to just actually set yourself up for the day. There's times where you want to start to tail down and look at your relationships, your meanings in life, and there's a time of the day when you want to just tail down, maybe do something which is a nothing action and go to sleep. So there are certain times where our body clock has these biological movements and says, trying to do an Excel at the same time as eating is not a good thing, right? So because you're trying to either eat or you're trying to cognitively use your brain. Now it's proven that your energy or your focus goes to where your digestive system is. So it's just super logical that if this was a computer, you'd be allocating the excess RAM down there in your stomach. And then you're trying to use the excess RAM up here as well. So it'd be a tussle. So they're the kind of things that we need to understand. And by the way, just to verify the cognitive understanding that multitasking is actually not possible as a conscious task, it's like trying to read two books at the same time. And most people say, well, Sukhi, this happens every single time I share this. Well, Sukhi, I do this every single day. I watch TV and I iron my shirt or my clothes. And I'm saying, absolutely brilliant. So can we just take 1 second and split it into 5 and actually look at each second stretched out and say the millisecond that you actually see, and this is probably a bit funny for your podcasters, that the millisecond you saw JR being shot on Dallas. Now, you have to be of a certain age to remember that. I do apologize. But the moment you actually saw him being shot in the shower or wherever he was, you were not ironing the crease. That millisecond, he's just been shot. So at that moment, you were not ironing. And at the moment you were ironing, you definitely weren't listening to the screen. So if you stretched that time elapsed into millisecond segments, you'll realize that you're actually really doing one of the two at one time. You may be flipping really quickly, but you are still doing one of the things at the same time, which basically one of the key things I share with people, sorry to hold any longer, is kind of like being multitasking with your own children. Yeah. If I'm standing there trying to help them or have a conversation with them, or they've asked me something, or friends, and I'm on the phone and I'm texting at the same time. Yes, love, no problem, that'll be fine. I'll do that. Yeah, no worries. And neither am I here nor there. So jack of all trades, king of none. That's the kind of thing that really makes it work.
I love that way of thinking about it as well, because I'm sure a lot of our audience will be able to put that into real life. I don't know whether you heard that was the 20-minute timer. It flies by, doesn't it? And I sometimes I'm going to have some of these guests back on again, because there's so many more things I'd like to talk to you about. So, Sukhi, thank you so much for your time today. Guys, if you really enjoyed that episode, I've got all the links for Sukhi to go and check out his website and connect with him on LinkedIn below in the comments. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, make sure you click the subscribe button. If you're listening to us on your podcast provider, make sure you follow us. And please follow me on my social media platforms and pass it forward and comment and share your takeaways from today's episode. So it just leaves me to say thank you, Sukhi. Thank you so much again for your time.
Stuart, it's been a complete pleasure, and it'll be a humble honor for me to come and share again.
Fantastic. So guys, look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday, 6 a.m. It'll be another episode. Thank you so much. See you all soon. Bye.